Good afternoon, dear viewer. My name is Peter MUYA. I'm co-founder and managing partner of PTI Consulting. And I'm here today to talk about the subject of enterprise architecture. It's a big term, but I'll try as much to unpack it in a language that is easily palatable to all of us. So in my discussion today, I'll talk about why we do enterprise architecture. I want to talk about why, because for everything that we do, there has to be a motivation. Yeah. Why do we need enterprise architecture? Why do we need to have this discipline when we have been moving all along, the way we have been? The last couple of years, and I believe even before, but from what I see and reading journals or interacting with people, there is a lot of concern on cost. The growth of a concept like cloud computing is partly because of management of cost, the capital expenditure in IT that is removed from the balance sheet and the P&L, so that the organization is free to focus on their core business. As an example, there is rising costs. If you look at a good example at a very minute level is, the cost of something as basic as unga. Yeah. So households have to do adjustment to be able to manage the rising costs. So if you extrapolate that within an enterprise, the cost element has all of a sudden become a key factor in decision making with regards to how enterprises transform. So they want to be efficient, they want to be effective, they want to better serve their customers, but at the most affordable investment in terms of operational and capital expenditure. And so that P&L item is a big issue for CEOs. We have seen today I was reading the story of Ford and the just retired CEO, and some of the reasons were to do with the financial outlook of Ford. They were saying that 40%, it has dropped in terms of value by 40% in a period of 3 years that the CEO has been on board. Right now, Ford and GM are actually playing catch up to the likes of Tesla in that automotive industry. Tesla is almost a startup. If you look at the number of years it has been in existence, considering in comparison to Ford and General Motors, it's like a drop in the ocean. But what it has done in the last few years it has been in operation has been phenomenal. And it's like now Ford and GM are actually playing catch up. So there is lots of demand for these big multinationals to actually transform within such a short period of time, and all of a sudden they realize, okay, some of the reasons why we cannot be able to compete with the emerging companies is because we are inefficient, we are costly, whatever we propose is way out of reach for people who we are trying to target, and so forth. So cost is a key element and is a big issue. Now, if you look at cost internally, part of what constitutes cost is purely inefficiencies in how decisions are made, or the decisions that are, for example, taken. Let me give you a scenario of one project that I was involved in a while back. So we had this, we were implementing a HR information system, and we're looking at the business processes of leave approval. So, so we had developed a proposed process of how the new way of approving leave would be in the system. And what had happened is the old way of doing things had actually been just mapped into the new way in the system. The person who was in charge of that line of business came and asked or posed the question that, wait a minute, if so and so wants to go on leave, forget about the system, who should know? on an operational basis. And we are all in agreement that is the immediate manager. But for some reason, we had all gotten into a conversation around just converting processes back into the system without looking at the reality on the ground or the practicality of that. And so when that sobering, discovery came, it put us in check, and we said, okay, but why did we have to go through this argue about all this long chain of process, whereas in reality it's just one person? But imagine if that was adopted. Yeah. So you have man hours that are being expended by different people who absolutely have no relationship with the person who is going on leave. It may look like a small thing, but it's cost. Now, assuming that was actually a sales process where somebody is applying for, say, postpaid connection, yeah, and it needs to go through some kind of credit approval for them to be given that connection as an account. So if you had those 6, 7, 8 kind of approvals, because that's how it has been done, you can imagine the cost. People have to be paid to manage that entire chain of approval. Now, if there is no justification that adds value to the customer and safeguards the interests of the company, then you have a problem. Because that cost, somehow somebody has to bear it. Either the organization bears it internally, or it shares it with the customer, or pushes it back to the customer. And that means the service, that particular service, becomes somewhat costly to either of them or to both of them. So by introducing the discipline of enterprise architecture, some of those spaces we are able to rationalize and see how can we optimize cost, how can we optimize the cost of how we serve our customers, of how we innovate or how we do things. So we give opportunities for people to interrogate themselves, to self-check, to clarify, to reconfirm, and to say, okay, now this makes sense, this is cost effective, and it enables us to be more efficient in this particular area. People have fears, they have their own biases. There's parts of them they bring to the organization that possibly they don't fully expose to the rest of the people. But yet, that hidden part, or those parts of them, but yet when they are guided by such kind of motivations and internal things that possibly are not understood by others, what happens is that sometimes people wonder, why did so and so make this decision? It becomes unexplainable or incomprehensible. Yeah. But since that person sits in a particular seat, yeah, they sit in a particular maybe level, you can't question. You say, fine, that is what they want, let's do it. Yeah. So what we are saying, if we embrace architecture in totality and accept that we want to implement or we want to do this, then we would come up with principles that, for example, say we explain our decisions. Yeah, that means we become vulnerable to one another. So I made this decision because of, not because I'm the CEO, not because of X. I made it because it means X, Y, Z to us. And the motivation that drove me to do that was X, Y, Z. We have a common set of shared values which I can make reference to. And people can hold me accountable when I make reference to those set of shared values. That means we have internal, or we have corporate culture that drives our own personal cultures, which help us to make decisions for the collective good of others. It's a bit psychological, but it's important as part of organizational, as part of people working together in teams. And so those are some of the things. So essentially, we do not produce a product, or architecture essentially doesn't produce products, but it may give you certain representations of thought, certain representations of how things should be. Yeah, it should help you make decisions. For example, by drawing a process, by projecting the future in terms of how information should flow. it gives you an indication of the thinking on the direction we want to go. Yeah. So you have a reference, you have a common reference. Yeah. But that's not a product. The product or the outcome of what you achieve is actually the impact of enterprise architecture. So it's a bit of something that you can't really quantify, but it is quantifiable within the tangible benefits that the organization gets. So at the very onset, there has to be a very good link between ends of an organization and how architecture helps in achievement of those ends.